Well, I'm talking today with Phil Gawne, and quite a few items you've got, but I'm really keen on the queening situation, which we broke the story earlier this week, about could be dramatic problems there for the production, for the fishermen to go out there to get the queenings because they're being overfished.
Yes, it's a big concern. Well, there are a number of issues associated with this. The first thing is that quite clearly, internally, the Manx industry has been too greedy and we've overdone it this year. But probably more significantly and more of a concern, and this is often a concern expressed whenever I'm talking to fishermen, is the impact from external fishermen. And what we see is over the last, 7, 8 years, the impact of our fishermen in terms of the tonnage caught has doubled over that period. But if you look then at the exponential growth in the Scottish and Northern Irish catch in our territorial sea, you see the Isle of Man going up gradually, you see Scotland going up like this, and Northern Ireland is sort of almost off the scale in terms of the tonnage that they're now landing compared with what they used to land.
So isn't this a problem? I mean, the Isle of Man can look after things, but you're indicating here it's foreign fishermen who are coming into Manx territorial waters who are potentially doing the most damage.
Yes, that is exactly what the evidence is showing. Now, the problem we've got is 90% of what we catch, we export into Europe. For these purposes, and currently, obviously UKIP, sudden rise in the polls may change this in future years, but at the moment, the United Kingdom for these purposes is Europe. So, through Protocol 3, we are also classed as being part of Europe. Now, if we decided to sort of close off our territory and say, right, that's it, no one else is coming in, we're just going to have that for Manx fishermen, there's a very, very realistic prospect that Europe will say, well, okay, you want your fish, you can have your fish, but you're not selling them to us. So we then lose the market for all the fish. In the past, we've had a good situation because our fishermen have gone and fished in Northern Ireland or Welsh or Scottish waters, wherever, and then others have come into our waters. So the agreement in the past had been fairly clear and fairly reasonable, free access to all fishermen in all fisheries. Over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, our fishermen have got used to the fact that we're managing our fishery extraordinarily well. So many of the fishermen who used to go away to fish haven't needed to. So they've become unfamiliar with fishing outside of the territorial sea. So we follow the scientific advice. The people who are going to be most severely affected are our fishermen, because they won't be able to fish anywhere because they've totally lost the knowledge now to fish outside the territorial sea. The Northern Irish and the Scots will be rubbing their hands with glee at the thought that we would completely close off the fishery, because they would see that would be the death knell for the Manx industry, and then they can come in and exploit it again in the future. So clearly something's going to have to change here. We're doing everything right outside of our territorial sea. There's very little being done in terms of conservation. So one of the positives that will come out of this is I can now go with a far stronger argument to Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England and say, you guys need to manage your bit of the Irish Sea a little bit better, because quite frankly this is not reasonable.
I mean, you as such a Manxman, and this issue must be, people watching this thing just can't believe what they're hearing. I mean, we've got video from years ago when you were seeding queenies into the water and all these sort of things, doing everything responsibly, and people come in and just take them. I mean, how frustrated are you?
Yes, very frustrated. I see the point of having equal access. I think that is probably a good thing if you have well-managed stocks everywhere. But clearly, if we're going to do the right thing, and we're putting lots of effort, both in terms of money and time, into properly managing our territorial sea, and then our neighbours have scant regard for sustainable fisheries, clearly they're going to come into our patch. And what would be the point of our fishermen going to Northern Ireland to fish when they've wiped out their fisheries? What would be the point of us going to fish in what used to be fairly lucrative fishing grounds in Liverpool Bay when they're being wiped out by very, very large industrial vessels?
But you've closed bits of the Manx territorial waters. I mean, that's legally done, is it? I mean, you can do that. Stop
Yes.
all fishermen going in there.
Yeah.
So again, I'm puzzled that we're in this situation now at all, because I thought everything, and most people I think also assumed it was all a good news story here.
And it has been. Up until this year, obviously. Last year we overstretched the total allowable catch, and that has caused most of the problem this year. But it's also fair to say that the science last year was far more positive than the science this year. So the indications were that recruitment was increasing. This is juvenile queen scallops, whereas the same 2 years that were plotted last year as levelling off, this year have been plotted as going straight down. So I think we were possibly slightly confused by the science last year, but I mean that's only a minor issue. But the top and the bottom of it is we have a problem. We are going to deal with that problem. I'm getting a little bit tired of being so productive and welcoming to visitors when they're not being as reasonable back.
Who sets these quotas? Do
We
you have?
do.
So
Yeah,
you got it wrong then?
Ultimately, it's my decision. I followed the advice of the Queenie Management
So you got it
Board
wrong
as best
last
I
year?
can. Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. But there are reasons for that. One of the reasons is the science was not as robust as it might have been, and I'm not criticising our scientists because I think they're doing an excellent job. We're way advanced in terms of our scientific understanding in the territorial sea than any other area. So it's not a criticism, but it is clear that the advice that we had last year, if it had been the same as it is this year, we might have done things a bit differently. But the other fault there is the Queenie Management Board had been used to 2 fairly lucrative years and wanted a third one. And I said, well, look, the science is saying this. Are you really sure? Oh yes, we think there's enough fish out there. We think we'll be able to manage. So what do you do? If you are trying to encourage responsible management by the industry, do you overrule them? And I didn't overrule them. Now maybe I should have done. Maybe I should have tried to shave a bit off what they were looking for. But my view is that they've made the mistake. The Queenie Management Board, the industry has made this mistake, and I'm hopeful that this year that's a lesson, a very valuable lesson learned by the industry.
The Queenie Festival, that must be looking a bit less
No,
happy
I
at
don't think so. No, I think in politics we have to look at the big picture. This is an unfortunate episode, there's no doubt about that. It is going to cause some financial hardship for our fishermen. There's no doubt about that either. But there is also no doubt that I'm going to be fighting as hard as I possibly can to ensure the long-term survival of our fishing industry. I'm going to be fighting as hard as I possibly can to develop a truly sustainable long-term queenie fishery. So this year is going to be seen as a bad year, no doubt, but next year will be better, and hopefully we will get away from the boom and bust fishery.
And decisions have yet to be made. What have you made those yet? I mean, will it be completely closed this year? Is that final? There's no queenie fishing?
Well, you just said decisions are yet to be made.
Well,
have
I
you
don't
made
know.
them yet? So,
I'm looking at you, I don't know.
No, I haven't made the decisions. I do believe that I should listen to the Queenie Management Board. I think, though, if the Queenie Management Board turns around to me and says, actually, Minister, we don't believe any of the science and we're just going to crack on, I will probably say, actually, I might just want to overrule you on that one this year. So we've got a choice. We either follow Bangor's very strict advice, which says no more fishing at all this year, or we follow what the fishermen would like, which is the same as last year, or we find some position in between. Now, what the Marine Stewardship Council has said, and they're the ones who give us the accreditation of sustainability for the fishery, is they've suspended their accreditation. They're waiting for 3 months to find out what actions we're going to take. But they have recognised in their public announcement that some form of commercial fishery has to take place this year for the whole sustainability of the industry.
When will the announcement be made then?
I suspect, and this is not good news for the media, I suspect it's going to be one of these things that will dribble out over a long period of time. I think what we can reasonably agree to today, because just after this interview I'm supposed to be chairing the Queenie Management Board, is that we will delay the start of the fishery. I imagine that will be to beginning of July, and I would imagine that we will have a very heavily restricted fishery in July, where we will have scientists and all our enforcement people rigorously checking everything that's being caught to find out what is actually out there, what's on the grounds. Because of course the fishermen are saying, well, we don't believe the science, we think there's plenty of fish out there. So we'll give the fishermen the opportunity to prove the scientists wrong, if you like.